Thank you everyone for joining to what I believe is going to be one of the most exciting sessions that we're going to have for the entire day.
Where in your organization do you have a process or a task where you would wish to have a superhuman brain that never gets tired doing it?
About a topic that is very much impactful already today.
We are using artificial intelligence for predictive maintenance.
And our clients are usually sovereign funds or like blue chip companies. Topic that fundamentally changes the way we transact, we interact. More and more there is an interest in exploring the benefits of Bitcoin mining, and we govern relationships.
And I think that's where AI then really becomes powerful if AI is combined with other technologies like blockchain.
It's about the crypto economy.
Pierre, thanks a lot for coming on the Proof of Work podcast. I got to know about you from someone that works in your team, Gabriel, and who I call Gabby. Gabby and I met when he came to NYU for a semester, and I had the good fortune of meeting him there, and we became just very quick friends. And I was studying blockchain and digital currencies at NYU. I studied under Professor Ian D'Souza, who sits in the board of Block Tower Capital, and I used to always talk about Bitcoin and everything to Gabby and other friends as well. And then after Gabby graduated, he returned back to Germany. He graduated and he got consultant role at Roland Berger. I was like very happy for him, and we all started living our lives. And then I noticed that quite recently he became a senior consultant and was doing stuff in the Web3 digital assets Bitcoin space in Dubai. And I hit him up. I'm like, we need to do a catch up. What are you doing in this space at all? And we had a good catch up. And then he spoke about you. He spoke very highly about you. And then I got a chance to meet you and speak with you. And you've been in the crypto space for so long. You've been in crypto earlier than me. And I have always so much respect for people who've been in crypto back in the 2013, 2014 days. So look, it's my pleasure, my greatest pleasure to have you on the Proof of Work podcast. So thank you for taking out the time, Pierre.
Thank you so much. And I mean, the story on how we're connected, I think is really funny, right? And it shows you how unpredictable sometimes the crypto ecosystem is. So thanks again for having me.
No, my pleasure. Now, Pierre, I've got to know you, but for our listeners, you've got a very fascinating background to get into blockchain. So I want to start off by, getting to know your journey into blockchain and crypto coming from a very professional consulting and energy consulting background. What piqued your interest into blockchain and crypto?
Yeah, that's actually a funny story, I guess. Or let me start with the with how my entire career journey started, just very briefly, right? So I started as a software developer. So I had a bachelor in information technology, and at that point in time, in Europe, if you wanted to get into blue chip companies or strategy consulting firms, an IT degree was not the fanciest thing to have on your CV, right? So I did an MBA on top. That MBA got me into the energy space. So I wrote my thesis at the end about comparing two of the major energy companies and the internationalization strategies and so on. And then got hired by one of them. I worked in the strategy team, in the investor relations team, and then also joined the head of strategy in setting up an in-house consulting team for that company at that point in time, which was a 80,000 people company, multinational, and so on. And so basically, then I completely forgot about my, entire IT background and so on and so forth. And I was purely focusing on business and energy, worked along the entire value chain. And fast forward, I became partner in that firm as well. And then around 2013-ish, we got a call from one of our sister companies that had a joint venture in Dubai with one of the major energy companies here. And they had a problem. So I went basically over for just one project to Dubai. And that basically then was the starting point, if you want to say so, of me being very attached to the Middle East and me really getting the flavor of what the Middle East is about. And at the same time, the entire industry I was working in, energy basically, had a bit of an identity crisis in the sense that, we had the rise of decentral power generation. So why would you need central power generation, oil and gas, nuclear, and so on and so forth? At the same time, everyone in certain countries could do retail of energy. Every retail company could get a license. So energy companies were really asking themselves, okay, what's next for us? Like, what's the future of energy going to look like? And I was fortunate enough to be part of a team that was, thinking about the setup of innovation hubs for the company. And with that, then also thinking about what are the themes that could define the future of energy. And one of the themes back then was blockchain. That was in 2014.
Yeah.
And I have to admit, I mean, it took me a while to understand the significant impact of the technology. But then with so many of us, like once it clicks and once you see the entrance of the rabbit hole, you never get out, right? So the moment this clicked for me, I was like blown away by it. And then obviously you learn everything about Bitcoin, the Ethereum ICO was coming up later and so on. So this is actually what got me into blockchain in the first place. The idea of what can the energy industry do next. And it was really based on the assumption that we're going to have a machine-to-machine economy. We have assets interacting with each other, and you need a trust layer that is actually managing all of this. And there came blockchain, so to say.
Yeah, look, I totally, first of all, great journey. And secondly, I'm totally with you. So I was in my final year of undergrad in 2011, and I had got this image. I used to stay on campus in Brisbane, Australia, and I had this image that this guy trades foreign exchange and equities during his free time. And so there was one of my friend, he said that you should look into Bitcoin. And that was like the first time I got to know about Bitcoin. But because I was like in my last year of undergrad and I was freshly, learning about all these macroeconomic principles and monetary economics and all, I was like, this seems like this is too good to be true. Like I didn't go deep to the blockchain layer. I just looked at Bitcoin and I'm like, this sounds like a virtual gaming asset more than anything. I think this is a fad. So I didn't go deep into it. And then in 2013, when there was a bull run again, and there was this, whole narrative about Silk Road and all that stuff, I was like, told you so. So my confirmation bias again told me that this is something not to be looked at. It was only when I was in 2015, I joined private wealth management in Australia, and Bitcoin has been legal in Australia for quite some time as well, since 2013. I started researching it from an alternative asset space. And then when Japan started talking about Bitcoin being a legal method for payment in the parliament when they were introducing it, I took an active interest in it and got into it as well. And once I got into it, I agree with you. Once you get into the rabbit hole, once you understand what this convergence of incentive system and blockchain technology and distributed computing of the Bitcoin network means, it's just like you can't get out of it. You're like, it's the future of money. So yeah, very interesting journey. I feel like a lot of people who enter this space from like traditional background has got a similar way of getting it, don't you think?
No, absolutely. I know a couple of friends and colleagues and acquaintances, like, from traditional blue chip companies that then found their way from their industry to that technology and then got stuck. Right. So, which is good news, by the way, which means in every blue chip company, we have someone that is a crypto guy at heart, so to say.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, I have read, first of all, you write very well. I think you should write more often on Medium and blogs and all.
Thanks.
But I read one of your Medium blogs, and I loved how you discuss about crypto providing the trust and verification mechanisms needed for responsible AI development. Can you walk me through, especially because this is the talk of the town now? Blockchain is like old news when it comes to venture capital. Everything is now generative AI.
Indeed.
That's the flavor. So can you walk me through why crypto is so crucial to optimize and protect AI?
Yeah, so the thesis behind that is the following. If you look at AI as a technology and where it will probably go, then for me, it's more likely than unlikely that AI is going to drive into centralization rather than decentralization, right? Because the bigger your model, the more data is in your model, the better, the more you concentrate and so on and so forth. And already today, we are in a situation where it's for some generative parts of AI very hard for the majority of the population to tell if it's generated by AI, if it's fake, or if it's real, right? And I think crypto is the perfect key to the lock of AI, so to say, because we have a centralization technology that is very powerful and that I think will do very well for us as humanity. Then you have the decentralization technology, that keeps that in check and ensures that the data that AI is feeding on is verified through a blockchain layer, which also is beneficial for AI, because if the AI is accessing data that belongs to my data wallet that is on chain, then it's a win-win to a certain extent, because I can decide if I want to monetize the data that belongs to me, and on the other hand, if the AI is accessing data that is verified by a user, you can be sure that it's also not trained on bogus data, right? So that's why I really think this is a key synergy that's going to play out, and there are many, but in addition to that, there are also many other use cases where I think, I mean, the synergy isn't that dramatic, but it's definitely there. But this entire data protection layer for me is a clear case.
Yeah, look, I'm with you. I'm gonna deep dive into this, but I want to bring up this point because it was part of your Medium blog as well. One of your quotes that I really love: "Only the combination." I love this specification there. Only the combination of blockchain with AI and Internet of Things, which people have forgotten as well now as a narrative, but only the combination of blockchain with AI and IoT will create amazing use cases.
Yeah,
Can you expand on that particular quote as to how you see this convergence as so powerful? And then I would love to deep dive and discuss on this a little bit more.
Yeah, sure. I think maybe in general, maybe it's if you look at the history of innovation, then the majority of really disruptive innovation never came from one single technology. It was always the combination of tech, right? And I think we have now these three technologies that all have their own kind of single spotlight moment. AI is having its single spotlight moment now. But I think you will realize relatively quickly that if you want to have mass scale use cases and really use cases that will drive prosperity of humanity, more than just, being a very knowledgeable assistant to what you do and making your work more efficient, you need the combination of these three technologies. So, and supply chain, for instance, will be one of the key elements, right? Because we already had this dilemma of blockchain and data. It's the classic garbage in, garbage out kind of thing. So here you need IoT to verify that the oracles actually are putting real data on chain. Yeah,
correct.
And now we have AI, which is supercharging the use of the database that has been created. Yeah. So for me, really, this triangle is where the real innovation is going to happen going forward.
I'm in agreement with you. So I'm not going to name the professor, but I remember one of the professors who still is anti-Bitcoin. And because he's anti-Bitcoin, he's anti-blockchain as well in a way. So you would have come across these individuals as well. People who are pro-Bitcoin, pro-crypto, pro-blockchain. Then there are people who are non-pro-crypto, but are pro-blockchain. And then there are people who are like, blockchain is a useless technology as well. Yeah. Crypto is useless, blockchain is useless. So he belongs to that category, that blockchain is a useless technology. It should be kept as that theoretical, 1980s concept that it should just be put as a digital notary as well. Nothing more useful can come out of it. So he belongs to that category. But I remember he was very big on Internet of Things. And I mentioned at that time, this is around 2017, 2018, pre-NYU, like just used to meet a lot of professors during meetups and entrepreneurs in Australia. So this professor, I used to tell them that, like, I don't see IoT doing well without it would do so well if you add the blockchain immutable layer to it as well. Because then you're getting information from machines that are non-tampered, and like you can do so many things. And at that time, at least I didn't have the foresight that we're going to have AI the way we have now. But yeah, totally with the convergence of all this, it's going to bring so many productive technologies, further innovations from it. So I'm totally with you.
Yeah, and I mean, this was the intersection between blockchain and IoT was part of our initial thesis about this machine-to-machine economy, because the idea was that through blockchain, out of many use cases, we're enabling use cases that had previously a threshold of costs of microtransactions. So, and now microtransactions are way more feasible, so to say. You don't need blockchain for microtransactions. That's also clear. But if you want to have it on a decentralized ledger and you want to have it basically bulletproof, then this is the way to go. So this combination of, let's say, assets that are producing data and selling their data through whatever system is, again, the best merge of these two technologies. So that was our very initial thesis at the beginning, that at least IoT and blockchain, there needs to be a play. And I mean, you see it like most of the Oracle companies that are working on proper data feeding. There's always, as soon as it comes to real life assets, there's always IoT involved, right?
Yeah, look, totally. I want to bring a project into our discussion only for a brief period, because you're a crypto OG back in the day. I mean, you're still a crypto OG because you've been there since back in the day. There was a very popular IoT crypto.
IOTA?
Yeah. And I don't, less I comment about it, the better, but like it had a thesis, but it didn't really execute on it. And that's where I really want to get your take, because you are working at one of the top professional professional management consulting organizations in the entire world, Roland Berger. And I know that you are based out of Dubai, and Dubai is so forward thinking, implementing all kinds of technology that I, for the benefit of our listeners, like Dubai actually has got its own blockchain strategy, right? When it comes to urban planning. So being like working at a top management consulting firm like Roland Berger, and then working from Dubai, where the city council, the ministers over there are pro blockchain and using it for urban planning and city development. When can we see the earliest form of the convergence of AI, blockchain, and IoT, like practically?
I think, you probably are aware that one of the main trends that I think financial institutions are looking into when it comes to the entire digital asset and Web3 space is this entire narrative of real-world asset tokenization.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And if we want to think about really creating benefits of real-world tokenization, let's just take a power plant, for example, like a renewable power plant. Then if you own a token of this power plant, you want to exactly know, or that should be the benefit of holding a token, how much power is it producing, what is the radiation, and so on and so forth, right? So all of these data feeds are very important for investor intelligence, basically, and driving the value of the asset. So for me, tokens are, so to say, smart shares, if you want to say so. And hence, if you want to tokenize these real world assets, then for sure, IoT comes into play. Yeah. Now, every of these big industry assets is already either implementing or thinking about how can we use AI for predictive maintenance, for better forecasting, and so on and so forth. Yeah. That's one thing where it comes to play. The other part is where I'm pretty excited about, and that's a use case that's already in existence today. It gets better every day, but it's this entire idea, of democratization of wealth management through the intersection of AI and crypto.
Yeah. Do you see any practical like startups coming out from it?
Oh, 100%.
Like just
100%. I mean, there are. So first of all, maybe this entire idea of using machine learning, as it was called a few years ago, right? Or statistics, or however you want to call it, for trading has been in the playbook of most of the trading firms anyways, right? So most of the prop traders had their own bots or algorithmic traders and so on.
Yeah.
But I think since the rise of, let's say, AI and digital assets, there are really a couple of very interesting startups coming out. And one of the guys, I like them very much, is Wisdomize. What these guys are doing is basically, the vision is to democratize wealth management. So they trained an AI model which is generative and predictive, and that basically can make calls on positions on a certain set of trained underlyings. Now it's crypto. They're also moving into commodities and so on. And that would allow, in theory, everyone on the planet to just connect their wallets, dedicate whatever fund you have, $10, $50, $1,000, and connect to the trading AI that they have and have passive income. I think that's a very, very, if this works out the way it's intended, then this is a very, very powerful use case, right?
Yeah. Yeah, look, I'm with you. So in one of my episodes, I had Professor Vasandhara from NYU on the podcast, and I studied systematic trading, machine learning in trading through him. And he's been in the AI space for since 1979. So he's like an OG when it comes to artificial intelligence. One of the lectures, he had invited the company from US, Wealthfront, and BlackRock, a professional from BlackRock who actually helps Wealthfront in designing those index portfolios in order to, basically allow passive investing by clients, by US clients, for US clients. And during that discussion, and I had this discussion again with Professor Thur, is that the half-life of these trading bots is it's not much. It runs out because the whole concept about trading is a strategy runs out after a few months. Back in the day, in the 80s, people used to do trend following, but now trend following doesn't necessarily work as a trading strategy unless you're hodling Bitcoin. But yeah, jokes apart.
I think long term I would still say there's a case for trends, right? But please go ahead and finish your point, and then
So I have, in my humble opinion, I haven't seen a publicly available trading bot that has worked consistently over time. I have not seen it. But yes, if somebody is able to crack it now with the ability of having, all these very high computational large language models and generative AI models and predictive models, if somebody can crack it so that it adapts with the changing market conditions and sentimental conditions, then yeah, that's a great tool to have. But what would happen to all the wealth managers in Dubai and London then?
Well, I mean, that's my point, right? I mean, if that really goes through, then every wealth manager that is not using such a system is definitely going to be, I mean, probably not out of business, don't want to be that dramatic, but I mean, it's probably losing the top spots to a certain extent. Yeah. But
yeah, true.
I really think, like, I mean, to touch on your point on the trading and the trends, and I'm borrowing this from CTO Larsen. I'm not sure if you know him. Also very famous.
I do. I have read about. Yeah.
He brings always like one I think really compelling point is that humans have always been wrong at two things when predicting technology. One is we overestimate how quick it will go up and how quick the implementation and adaptation from that is. And this is actually why in the in the Gartner hype cycle, we always see, this curve and then it falls down, because everyone was expecting way more adoption than everyone is so to say delusional about it. That's one thing. But the other thing we get wrong then is the significance of the impact that the technology then has when it's going to be rolled out. Yeah,
sure.
And I think we're seeing the same thing with crypto right now, by the way. But to my point of the trading part, I think it makes sense if you trade long term to follow certain indicators, follow certain trends that you are fine with.
Great.
But short term, I really believe there is absolutely no way for any human being to compete with AI in the short term. In short term time frame trading, it's just not possible.
Yeah, totally agreed with you. Yeah, I was talking more about the short term trading. Like if the trading bot is like executing trades like on a daily basis, then I haven't seen a consistently performing trading bot ever in my life. But there would be in proprietary hedge funds, they would be having those bots. But to have it available to the public, I haven't seen that consistently performing short term trading bot. But yeah, I'm totally with you. So I think I have heard this statement that is articulated very well, and you articulated it very well as well. Quite often, people overestimate the impact of innovation in the short term and underestimate it over the long term. And that's pretty much what you're saying. So I totally agree with you there when it comes to innovation.
And AI will fall into the same trap now, right? I mean, everyone thinks now AI will do everything tomorrow, right? It's not the case, right?
Yes. Yeah, I'm totally with you on there as well. Now, coming back to a little bit on geography, you have got experience working in Europe. Now you've been in the Middle East for quite some time as well. What excites you most about the crypto landscape emerging in the Middle Eastern region, especially outside Dubai? Since we are hearing a lot of talks about sovereign wealth funds from Oman. I think Saudi Arabia is also thinking about setting something around the Bitcoin mining infrastructure and investing billions of dollars there. So what is your take about the excitement about Web3 and crypto in the Middle Eastern regions outside the Emirates?
Outside the Emirates. So I would still say the Emirates is the driving force and the hotspot, without a doubt, by a long shot. Yeah.
Okay.
And that obviously also affects the surrounding countries. I think you probably have seen in the news that last week or the week before, it was finally officially disclosed that Oman is investing into 800 megawatts of Bitcoin mining capacity. Before that, again, coming back to the Emirates, before that, Abu Dhabi also announced a significant portion of Bitcoin mining megawatts dedicated. So this region, I'm pretty certain of that this region in 4 or 5 years or even earlier will hold a significant portion of the entire global hash rate of Bitcoin.
Well, okay.
Right? And we know how flexible the Bitcoin network is in moving from location to location, right?
Absolutely.
So my view is that the openness of most of the governments in the Middle East towards driving a change and really setting an agenda with innovation topics will just lead to the fact that this region will become, if not the hotspot, at least a significant hotspot for Web3 digital assets. Saudi, you mentioned Saudi. Saudi so far hasn't done a lot on this, but obviously if you look at all the other initiatives that Saudi Arabia is kicking off or is running since a while, it's like very impressive the amount of speed and change they are pushing. So I'm very sure that as soon as digital asset becomes an official theme, that this is going to lead to a massive disruption over there. But also, if you look at reports from crypto usage in the region, then because we have a very young population here compared to Europe, right? I mean, our age pyramid here is literally a pyramid, not like in Europe where it's actually upside down, right?
No,
so you have a lot of people already engaging in digital assets. And, so I'm very optimistic when it comes to that.
Yeah, look, totally. I think I was reading just the other day that Dubai was ranked at number 3 when it comes to crypto adoption. It was only behind Switzerland and Singapore when it comes to crypto adoption. It was either that or when it comes to crypto infrastructure. One of these 3, but it was in top 3. Dubai.
I think I saw the headline as well. I think it even said UAE was number 1, but I haven't actually read the article in detail.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if this is true. But then on the other hand, I still think the race is still on, right? Regardless of me being very optimistic about the Middle East, the race is still on. Europe took a very long time to get their act together on a regulation. Now MiCA is out. That's a perfect platform for institutions to now build their products, build their offerings, and so on. And hence, I think it's really hard to make a bet on which region is really pushing forward. If I would just go by, the mindset that you feel, then I would rather bet money on the Middle East than on Europe these days with regard to this topic.
Yeah, look, totally. And I think the fact that Middle East governance is centralized and European is more bureaucratic and more democratized in their decision making, that also acts as a factor. But I had Chloe White, who's one of the massive thought leaders in the global regulatory space, and she told me that her experience dealing with ministers and advisors with VARA was that they are super forward thinking, and they're like total visionaries on how they want to shape these emerging technologies within the economy. So even I'm also getting the vibes that maybe I should now move to the Middle East as well.
Join us. But I mean, what you're saying is for me also, like personally, it was the reason why, I mean, I'm here since end of 2013, right? There were many occasions where, I had the opportunity to go back to Europe or even go to the US.
Yes.
I deliberately decided to stay here because the minute I arrived, and you could feel, this kind of mentality and vibe that, oh man, something is going to happen here. There's a very forward-looking government. We have an AI minister since 2017-ish or something. I'm not sure, maybe 18 or 19.
I didn't know that.
We have an AI minister in the first place, right?
Wow. Okay.
So you see all of these very forward-looking topics being picked up on the government level, and that really drives down activity, not only in the public sector, but also in the private sector. Yeah.
I want to deep dive on the private sector that you've mentioned. Now, yes, from the public enterprise and public decision-making point of view, Middle East is doing everything like pro-future tech in a lot of ways. But we don't necessarily hear about the Middle Eastern region when it comes to the amount of private capital being raised for the domestic startup scene. Like US is number 1 when it comes to its vibrant startup economy. Then China is there. We hear about India a lot, that they've got like a massive startup economy as well. Israel is big as well. Singapore, Hong Kong. Where do you see Dubai or the Middle Eastern region as a whole coming up and giving fight to these massive startup hubs when it comes to come and build your startup over here? And then we start hearing news like Dubai is like the startup capital of the world, or it's one of the startup capitals of the world. Do you see that happening soon as well? Or is it already happening?
It is already happening, but I think it's still in early stages if you would compare it to Silicon Valley or compared to Israel, which is the kind of hotspot for that, right?
Yeah.
That is still in early stages. However, it's not like they started only yesterday. So just to give you a comparative figure as well, like if you might look at the total amount of VC investments, then yes, it's small in the UAE, for instance, or in Saudi. But if you look at the relative investment, for instance, of the VC investments that are happening in Dubai compared to the GDP, it's already at the 1% mark. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And the US is, I don't know, the US might be 1.5% or something, but it's not bad for, it's punching above its weight already. And what you definitely see in Saudi and in particular in the UAE, there are many government-driven startup hubs that are opening, that are already open. There are VC strategies laid out by the ministries of investments and so on. So there is a very clear target of the regional governments to get this scene established in the Middle East. Now, as you know, I mean, it always takes, it doesn't only take a government to set a bit of funding and dedicate a bit of real estate. It's also, to a certain extent, a very organic movement that needs to happen to create a startup, right? You need the critical community, you need academia, you need affordable living as well, right? To a certain extent, right? So, but having said that, I'm also very certain that maybe it doesn't become the hotspot of the world, but I'm pretty sure that it will definitely outcompete a few of the countries that are now ranked higher.
Sure. Look, I didn't know that, but that is a huge number. Like, if the startup economy is also already contributing 1% of the GDP, like, if that's the size, then it's a pretty sizable amount. The investment. That's pretty impressive.
And, sorry, maybe just give you one other, let's say, indicative figure on this. So what we do is we on an annual basis, we collect the data about how many digital asset and Web3 companies are in the UAE. We started this with our partners, Crypto Oasis. They're mainly running this report. And in 2020, the number was 300 something, right? Now the number is 1,650 or something. Massive growth, right?
Yes. Yeah, that's a massive growth. Sure. I want to touch upon innovation large. We've spoken mostly about crypto, Web3, and so forth. It's fair to say that most of the innovative private companies that we see still come majorly from the US. A lot of reasons for it. It could be the culture, it could be the capital, the ease of capital. It's, the risk-taking culture that they have, the cheap credit that they had for a decade, and so forth. There's a lot of reasons for that. So US is definitely, like, I don't see anybody displacing US when it comes to, producing more innovative companies anytime soon. That's just my humble opinion. But then we hear a lot about Singapore. We hear a lot about Israel. We hear a lot about China, India as well. Are you thinking that Dubai is going to probably give a run for its money to all these other 4 centers when it comes to being competitive in producing those innovative companies that come out to the world but originate from the Middle Eastern region?
Well, I mean, I would say Dubai has proven time after time that everything is possible.
Yeah, that's true.
So I wouldn't rule it out that that's actually the case at the end. But I think, I mean, it depends on so many factors. I think that Dubai would not have under control, right? That is hard to predict. As I mentioned, talent, academia, and so on. But maybe, it's also more of a question of will people still be attracted in the next 5 to 10 years to go to Silicon Valley? I mean, I'm hearing at least less and less interest to go there, right? Obviously, still kind of the champion spot for startups just because of the capital. I mean, the amount of capital you can raise in the US compared to anywhere else in the world is just insane, right?
Yeah, sure.
So I can't give you a yes or no, but I wouldn't be surprised if at least they put on a good fight.
Yeah, look, totally. So you've been based out of Dubai since 2013,
yeah,
right?
End of 2013, I moved here.
So I believe that Dubai, like a lot of people among my circle, whether in Australia or even in India, they believe that Dubai at the moment is enjoying a fad kind of a success. Like, everybody's talking about Dubai, and that's probably because of what happened last year geopolitically. And we saw inflation everywhere, and Dubai is kind of like, we're not seeing inflation that much, but I went to Dubai. Dubai is a very expensive city. The rents over there are crazy. So it's not like Dubai hasn't experienced inflation. It's just that the purchasing power for people who work there is very high. So they don't see that impact as much as people in Europe are seeing because of the, no growth in wages for so many years, or US for that matter. So my question to you is, like, as somebody who has seen Dubai since 2013 and saw it evolve, in my 1 month of visit in Dubai this year, I witnessed that Dubai is enjoying the success what it has now is not a fad. It's actually because of a very consistent vision that they had since early 2000, and they're just focused on building. Like they had this thought that I learned in sports economics at NYU that people said, build a stadium in US and people would come. And I think that Dubai had that similar approach that we'll build something great that nobody has ever built with the most fanciest and, cutting edge infrastructure for their citizens, and people would come. And I believe that's what the dividend that they are, reaping now. Would you agree to that?
100%. And that can be seen in so many instances. And it even started earlier than 2000s, right? So
that's,
when Dubai started thinking about building an airport, like everyone was saying, like from the outside, like, why? Why would you do this? Right? And then they built the next airport and the bigger airport and an even bigger airport. And now Dubai is one of the central traveling hubs, or the UAE in general, right?
Yes.
And Dubai has taken this, I think what the UAE in general has done remarkably well is taking this idea of building hubs, travel hubs, financial hubs, trade hubs, whatever, and building infrastructure for this in a large scale that would accommodate a lot of people. And then, sometimes then time is on your side, but I really wouldn't consider this luck. This is as you rightfully said, like it's a conscious risk-taking decision, believing in a vision and then building the infrastructure for this. Yeah, and indeed, now you're ready to welcome everyone. Now you're ready to kind of benefit from the infrastructure that you've built.
Yeah. Now, we are also witnessing the other major economy of the region, Saudi Arabia, opening up. And they are building with a lot more investment, with, I would say, theoretically larger visions, especially Riyadh. They're making it very big. And, Roland Berger has got like massive presence in the Saudi Arabian region as well. And you're a very senior leader in the company. So you're interested to get your take as to, having been early in the Dubai development scene and now seeing Saudi Arabia doing something similar, but only started it like a few years ago. Do you see Saudi Arabia, or at least Riyadh, eventually becoming like Dubai? Or is it going to take some time? Is it going to be quicker? What is your take on that? Riyadh versus Dubai?
It's an interesting question that I think everyone's kind of immediately is debating or has on their mind. So I think my view on this is Dubai and Riyadh are very, very different, right? So I don't think Riyadh will become a Dubai. That will not work. I think that therefore Dubai has just a very, very unique story. And also like the size of Dubai compared to Riyadh also plays into that role as well. I think Dubai or the UAE have, because of their size, have shown in many, many adverse situations how quickly they can adapt. This entire COVID topic was also something where I think Dubai handled this fantastic, because they were able to move around very, very quickly and make decisions on the spot. Riyadh is a really big city, and Saudi Arabia is a huge country, right? So I don't think it will, replace Dubai in terms of like people would either choose to live there and there. I think they will mutually benefit from each other, because then now all of a sudden it's not only, I'm talking now more for the kind of Western expats, that would be placed in the Middle East. And of course, if you ask probably 100 of them, then still 95 would say, yeah, I want to live in the UAE, right? That is changing. That is changing for sure. So, and I think the entire region will benefit from having probably two locations that are attractive to live, attractive to work, where you can work exciting stuff. But I think, I'm a bit biased now, being based in the UAE for so long, having my friends here as well. I think the UAE cannot be copied in that sense. And by the way, I don't think that is actually what Saudi Arabia is trying to do. They're building their own legacy. They're building their own very impressive story.
Yes. No. Yeah, cool. Look, you're seeing the enthusiasm after living in Emirates, even after 10 years. So a lot of people, get bored of the region after they live for 10 years. But seeing that enthusiasm and endorsement from you, I think a lot of my students would be like, after graduation, let's look out for Dubai.
You should definitely come and see it with your own eyes. And I think this is what I actually, have been telling most of my colleagues from Europe over the time, right? Don't talk about it, just come here and witness it for yourself, right? And I haven't seen a single one of them that hasn't left the country with like, oh man, this completely changed my perception of what this place is actually going to look like. And they were impressed, right?
Well, likewise, when I came to Dubai, it was my first time I came and I was so impressed. Yeah. So it was so clean. The city was so clean. And there was, the main roads where there's so much of traffic, and on the right hand side I see 3 peacocks. I'm like, You don't see that. So it was a great city. It was very safe. I felt very safe even at nighttime when I was going out, and a very diverse demographic of people living there. There are a lot of Europeans.
Exactly. And see, this is, I think, the very interesting thing that surprises a lot of people. This city is a melting pot of so many cultures, so many religions living peacefully together, right? And and that is another element of Dubai that is just, or of the UAE in general, that is really amazing, right?
Yeah, totally. Now, I'm interested to now change the topic to something that I find really interesting to study, but I do not ask these questions often to people, but you seem like an individual that would have a very, interesting take to it and a very knowledgeable take into it as well, given your vast global experience, diversified cultural experience. What's your take on Generation Alpha, the people that are born between 2010 to 2024? How would this generation growing up immersed in crypto, AI, and Web3 shape their worldview and aspirations?
That's a very interesting question. And obviously it can go in multiple directions, right? But maybe, my initial thoughts on this is like everyone that belongs to that generation is a digital native on steroids, right? I mean, we've been talking about digital natives in the previous generations, people that grew up with iPhones and iPads, but I mean, this is a whole another level in the sense that you're not only using technology. My view is that this generation is integrated with technology, right?
Exactly.
And that can be good and bad, right? And good and bad in the sense that I really think that we would need to adopt educational systems, right? Because certain skills might get lost along the way because you have a fundamental integration with technology. That's why, by the way, I think really like if we think about talent of the future, the most relevant skills you need to teach are empathy and creativity.
So true.
Right?
Yeah.
And obviously a critical mindset so you understand. I mean, if you work with AI, you need to have a critical mindset because you need to judge if your co-pilot has actually given you a help or if he's hallucinating, right? So that is going to be interesting. Then the second part, next to that digital integration, is I think it's also going to be, maybe we call it, like fluid in realities, right? I mean, there's a fluidity between the digital realm and the real world, so to say. And that can be, overlays on how we see the world. I mean, we will see where spatial computing is going to take us in the next 10 years, right?
Yes.
I mean, I find it highly likely that at one point in time, augmentation of your reality is a very standard thing. Yeah.
Yes.
So, And that also then means that your digital persona for this generation becomes much, much more important than for the generations before. And it might even, to a certain extent, and I mean, I hope for humanity we don't go that way, that your digital persona becomes even more important than your real persona, right?
I get what you're saying.
This is why I said like empathy is such an important concept to teach in critical thinking, to ensure that there's character building and so on. Yeah? Because I think being born in this generation is an amazing thing because you are exposed to technology that the previous generation couldn't have dreamed about, right?
Totally.
But also it brings such an important responsibility to ensure that this generation is equipped with, the right skills to handle all of this.
Yeah, look, great points. And I'm in total agreement with you. Like they are living in technological nirvana. Like they were going to be born and they do not need to unlearn, like a lot of people from their previous generation need to unlearn when it comes to adapting with these technologies. They're just going to be, like you said, immersed and integrated with it, that it'll be like natural.
Exactly.
Dealing with these technologies. When you were answering this, I wanted to get your take that how big of a role is psychology going to play in the development of the knowledge professional of the future? Because just to give you some context, like I don't think we learn psychology enough when we are doing our bachelor's degree or master's degree. Yes, we learn marketing, but learning psychology as part of the marketing subject is like 1% of the entire psychology subject. So because we are saying that now for this generation, technology, like they do not need to learn technology, like how we till a certain extent had to learn technology, growing up. These guys, kids of 2010 to 2024 wouldn't need to learn technology because they'll be handed a phone and they'll learn it themselves. So how important the role of educating psychology to this generation will play in developing them as a knowledge professional?
I think pretty important. And I mean, now you open the topic, right? You open the topic of what is it that we actually don't learn in our education. I think psychology for sure is one. missing philosophy. We've been missing, ethical training. We've been in particular missing all the economic principles about money that are not
true. Personal finance.
Personal finance. How does money work, right? I mean, all of these very fundamental.
Money creation.
Exactly.
Totally missing.
Exactly. I mean, nutrition as well is also not really part of the scale, right?
True.
So missing many fundamental things where I would hope these would actually be fed into the curriculum, if you want to say, of the new generation. Psychology for sure is a very key element because in particular, I think this generation probably, I mean, it's an assumption, we might see if that's true, right? But I would assume they have way more or way less personal contact, personal interaction than the generations before. Right?
They do.
And that would even probably be amplified if we really get into an augmented world or metaverse kind of world, where you really need to be self-aware of how you function and how your counterparty functions, right? And then, I mean, the psychology part then also plays into the entire AI part, right? I mean, I'm pretty certain we're going to interact with a lot of AI avatars in the future, right? So if you interact with them as a human being, you need to understand how reactions are created and so on. So, but what's your view? You think it's going to be important?
Yeah, look, I believe it's already important that we should showcase that, because I feel like we've got a lot of wisdom, we've got a lot of creativity, but the thing missing in the world just now is compassion. And compassion wouldn't come without any empathy. So if you're empathetic, you'll be compassionate. And so I think it should already be part, but the topics that you mentioned, in addition to psychology, nutrition, money creation, personal finance, I've had so many, and I'm sure with your network of people as well, like I've got so many friends in Australia who are doctors, lawyers, but have no clue on how to manage their personal finance. And same thing in India as well now. So there are so many subjects that are so basic in the human development once people grow up that are just not there. And they figure it out themselves. And by that time, it's too late, because there are other responsibilities there. So I think it's very important. Whether it will be addressed, I do not know.
Yeah. But touching on that point, I think, this is why I try to, shill everyone the Bitcoin standard book that I come across, right? Not because I want to, convince them about Bitcoin. I even tell it to them, like, don't read it because of Bitcoin, but just read it, have some inner dialogue about what do you think is actually money and how it has been created, right? Because ultimately, and I think this is probably one of the key competences, or that I would be my wish for the new generation to have, this is a thought of being self-sovereign and having a choice, at least a deliberate choice, where they want to be self-sovereign and where not.
Yeah, look, I'm totally with you there. I wrote the book on history and evolution of money under Professor Ian D'Souza, and I also, as part of doing that, I came across the Bitcoin Standard, and it's a fantastic book. Everybody should read it, not because it's a Bitcoin book, but it gives you a good understanding of what money was, what money is, and what money should be according to the author.
Exactly.
I just have one take on it, and it's since we've got some time, would love to have this thought experiment with you. We've got the Bitcoin maximalist who think that Bitcoin will solve all the world's problems. I consider myself like a closet Bitcoin maximalist, because I do believe that there is Bitcoin and then there is other cryptos. Like, I don't think Bitcoin has a competition. Other cryptocurrencies could have a competition, but I don't think Bitcoin is a competition. It's bulletproof money, according to. But having said that, the Great Depression told us that having something like a hard money has its limitation as well, because then you do not have the flexibility to solve some of the crises. So I also of the view that replacing the current central banking system would not be a thoughtful thing to do and just going to the Bitcoin standard. So I think there needs to be a hybrid model where, yes, as a private citizen, having the ability to hold a Bitcoin in a self-custodial manner, that is great. That is separating money from the state, or at least that is giving the option to separate money from the state. And we've seen how when we separated religion from the state, how much abundance we saw as a society. So similarly, I also believe in the opinion, although it's a very controversial opinion in some countries, including India, where I'm living in just now. But I also believe that money should be separated from the state, or at least it's an experiment that we should look at. And if we are going to experiment, then I don't see any other instrument apart from Bitcoin that can help us do that. So from that point of view, Bitcoin is a good experiment in monetary economics, and we should let it flow. But on the other hand, I also think that the monetary system that we've got of this whole central bank creation after the 1971 Richard Nixon decision to remove the gold backing, we've reached now a point of no return. And we need the central bankers and economists who've got the positional powers to do something, to be creative now, to come up with a solution. And I don't think increasing interest rates is going to be that solution.
I 100% agree. I 100% agree with that. And I mean, I would also wish, if I could make a wish choice about a scenario, that is not going to be an either or, because I think even though, I would be totally fine with a Bitcoin standard, 100%, right? But I came to the conclusion over the past years that I think the majority of people would not be fine with a entirely self-sovereign asset system, right?
Yeah.
But I think this revolution of a self-sovereign asset system needs to happen in the sense that it's a choice, it's a deliberate choice, right?
Agreed.
I think if we would just, move now to a Bitcoin standard overnight, I think a lot of people would just be scared, right? So people want to have, sometimes conscious, sometimes not conscious, they want to have people taking over their sovereignty in certain aspects of their life. And if it's a deliberate choice, that's fine, right? So, but this entire topic, and this probably worth even another episode, is, talking.
We should do that.
Maybe we should do it. Yeah, exactly. Talking about, what happened, what's the model that's going to play out for nation states, right? You're pretty sure you read the network state as well, right?
I did.
So I find this idea super intriguing, right? And I also don't think it's going to be either or, but I think we're definitely going to see a network state-ish kind of movement going to happen. Maybe we don't call it state, but more clubs or something, right? But that's another entire interesting, let's say, societal shift.
So look, first of all, two things. I'm totally, open, and it'll be great to, in the coming months, whenever you get time, come on the pod again and talk about that. I'll tell you interesting thing about network states. So I had the former finance secretary of India on the podcast like a few weeks ago, and I released the episode as well. But when I went to his residence and I spent some time with him before I invited him on the podcast, I asked him, because he's also got his opinion about cryptocurrencies, since he was in the government, making decisions around this. Now he's retired. So I spoke to him that whether he's read Network State from Balaji, and he said he has heard about it. He's heard about Balaji and what his views are, and he's drilling down and reading more about it so that he can have an informed opinion to make commentary about it. It would be great if he, you, me, all three of us talk about the future of network state, because he did say that he also believes that in the future, like after a few decades, the concept of network state is going to be more profound than what it is now.
100%. Let's do it. I'm up for it, right? So, and I think it's such an important topic that I would hope, this topic also provokes a lot of thoughts in people, right?
Yes.
So
yeah, totally. Look, okay, leave that with me. I've got a task now. I don't get generally tasked after a podcast, but I've got one. I'll ask him whether he would be cool to do that. Lastly, Pierre, really, wanting to know this, and this is mostly for my students. So I'm a visiting professor at a couple of business schools in India since I've come over here. It would be great learning for them and also for me as well, since you're such a, senior executive in management consulting and a whole lot of thought leadership in Europe and Middle East. If you could go back to the beginning of your career and give yourself only one piece of advice, knowing what you know now, what would it be?
Buy Bitcoin. Jokes aside, that would for sure be an advice. But if you just want to think from a character development point of view, then I think it would be, trust the journey, right?
Trust the journey,
in the sense that, sometimes things take a little longer to play out, but the journey that you're on is already, part of getting where you want to go in that sense, right? And I think if you have more trust in the journey while doing all the things that you want to do, I think I haven't seen in my own life, and I haven't seen in the stories of my colleagues any example where it didn't play out for the better. Yeah. So don't get nervous in between. That's probably the advice I would give myself, in addition to buying Bitcoin.
That's great advice. I think both of them are great advice, but yeah, that advice is also pretty good. To trust the journey. I think Steve Jobs also said something similar when he came as a Henri, that don't worry, in the end, the dots get connected somehow.
Similar, exactly.
So don't worry.
Exactly.
Yeah. Look, Pierre, thanks a lot. I really appreciate the time you've taken. I know that you were working today, and then after work, you came and did the pod. So thanks a lot for coming on the Proof of Work podcast. Now, this was all the long form questions, but in my podcast, I keep a final segment, which is a very playful segment called the rapid fire question round, where I ask questions that warrants only 1 to 3 word responses or yes or no responses. You can choose to pass, but I think knowing you, I think you'll answer all the questions.
Let's go.
Okay. Let me just bring those up. Perfect. So whenever you're ready, I'll start with the rapid fire questions.
Let's go.
Cheeseburger or pizza?
Pizza.
Pizza. PC or Mac?
Mac.
Books or podcast?
That's a tough one, actually. But I would say books.
Books. God, I shouldn't ask this, but I'll ask. Bitcoin or Ethereum?
If I have to choose, Bitcoin. If you give me the option, I take both.
Go-to karaoke song?
I think that's something I really need to pass. I've never done karaoke.
Sure. Favorite dad joke?
Oof. I unfortunately also need to pass that.
Yeah, it's a tough one. If somebody would have asked me, I would have couldn't come up with it. Favorite movie?
The Matrix.
Oh yeah, great one. I love Matrix.
But only the first part. I think it's one of these kind of movie series that got worse and worse with every episode. Yeah. I mean, number one is just legendary, and it's
true. Agreed. It's I'll tell you. So I was only 10-year-old when I saw Matrix for the first time. I didn't understand it, but I was wowed by the special effects. It's only when I entered college, I may be a late bloomer in philosophy and all that, but when I was in college and I saw Matrix again in one of the dorm movie nights, I started seeing the profound philosophical undertone within the movie. Like, it's so philosophical, that movie. So yeah, it's one of my favorites as well. Chess or poker?
Chess.
Most underrated city according to you? Most
underrated? It depends on who you ask, right? I would say, because whatever city I name, they're going to be offended that I call them underrated, but... But I would actually say, I mean, Zurich, well known, but I don't hear a lot of people, going there. But I really love Zurich.
Got it. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people don't. Actually, I've heard only good things about Zurich. But fair enough. You think it's still underrated. Fair enough. Yeah. Time travel, back in time to dinosaurs or in future to cyborgs?
Future. I'm not interested at all in dinosaurs.
No Jurassic Park, no paleontology.
No, I want to see cyborgs. I want to see the Terminator T2. So,
got it. What is one mindset shift that changed your life?
I think it relates a bit back to what I said. When you asked me about the advice, like, trust the journey. As soon as you figure that out and you have enough positive examples in your life that you can trust on this, then things get way easier and way relaxed. And I think the main point that goes with that is more focus on the present than the past and the future.
Yeah. If you could pick any superpower, which would you choose?
Is time travel, I think, that I would pick.
Yeah. Got it. Time travel. So since you mentioned that you want to go to future to cyborgs, I'm now interested that since you've got the superpower hypothetically to time travel, if you have to go back to history, which historic period would you go to and which part of the world?
Oh, I think there's so many, because I think there's so many parts of the history that I would love to see with my own eyes rather than, reading about it and then, reading a story on how someone think it looked like, right?
Yeah. You have to pick only one though.
Let's just pick the ancient Egypt times. Oh, I mean, I would love to see with my own eyes how it really went down, right? So,
the most brilliant thinker more people should know about.
I would say, I mean, the guy's not alive anymore, but it's Immanuel Kant, one of the German philosophers, which I find very, very important for people to know about and to know about the thinking on, again, comes a bit to the self-sovereignty part and, and being more mindful about the capabilities of the mind and so on.
I will definitely read it up because philosophy is a subject that I self-teach myself a lot. And I'm interested to get your take, and this is not rapid fire, but interested to get your take. History has brought so many profound philosophers from all kinds of the world. There are great German philosophers, Greek philosophers, American philosophers, British, French, all great philosophers of our time have been in history. I do not know whether you would agree or not, but do you see there has been a dearth of original philosophical thinking since the Industrial Revolution?
100%, 100%. I mean, it has been, unfortunately, a decline of so many kind of disciplines, right? Arts, philosophy, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
I don't have the answer why that is the case, but is that I 100% agree that the thinking died out a bit, right? I see though a new wave of potential renaissance of philosophy coming up, which is more about, philosophy about the virtual realities, digital reality, that triggered the entire thought of what is real, what is reality.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
So but I agree. So
yeah, you're right. You brought a good insight that the modern day philosophy has been like around this virtual reality. Like, for example, the concept of metaverse, which was started in the 60s. I mean, the word was later on in neuromancer in the 80s, but like before that, people didn't like, they spoke about the concept of metaverse, just not with that word, even in the 60s. So yeah, and this whole concept about simulation theory, like we are living in a simulation. Do you think we are living in a simulation?
Well, I would not be comfortable enough to say no. Let me put it like that, right? So
got it. That's a good answer. Yeah, cool. Look, my last question for the podcast episode here. Thanks a lot again. What quality do you most admire in a leader?
If I can only pick one element, then it's optimism. Yeah,
optimism.
I think the primary task of someone that leads someone or a group of people is to, of course, keep them safe as well, but to activate them. And I think for someone to be able to activate other people, you need to have an optimism. You need to carry the flag, right? Not like naive, but you need to have optimism. And second part is obviously you need to have the empathy to understand, like, how is the group thinking? How are the people thinking? What do they need? And how can they get activated? I really believe the ideal leader is someone that can activate others rather than tell them what to do.
Yeah, agreed, totally. Pierre, this was the Proof of Work podcast. I really want to thank you. I had a lot of insightful discussions with you that was fulfilling, very deep. So really thank you for taking out the time. How was your Proof of Work podcast experience?
Amazing. Again, thanks for having me. I was just looking at the time and I didn't realize it passed already. So speaks for a good conversation. So thanks for having me.
It was entirely my pleasure, and I'll get in touch with you again, and also with Subhash Chandra Garg sir, and see whether we can do the three-way conversation on network state from our respective angles. I'll try to make that happen. But again, Pierre, look, thanks a lot. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.